Well, hello there, hobby farmers. I'm Bevan Cohen, and today I'm going to show you how to make a Florida weave, a trellis system to help hold up our tomato plants all summer long. Now, although our young tomato plants do look quite erect, essentially tomatoes are vines. And as they grow, and especially once they have some heavy fruits on them, they're going to lean right over and just start to sprawl across the ground. Now, this is going to cause our tomato plants to be prone to disease as well as rotting of the fruits themselves. So this Florida weave system is going to help us lift these plants up, keep them out of the dirt, so we can have a long season full of delicious, juicy heirloom tomatoes. Now, there's a number of different techniques that folks use to trellis their tomatoes to help keep them up off the ground. We can just pound a stake into the ground and tie our tomatoes off that way. Some people like to use tomato cages. But when we're dealing with a situation like this, where we can grow our tomatoes in long, straight rows, the Florida weave is the technique that we want. It's the most efficient way to hold our tomatoes up. So let me get my supplies together. We'll run through the supplies that we need, and we're going to get started. Now, the equipment that we're going to need to create a nice Florida weave, very simple stuff. Of course, we're going to need our T-posts, some nice strong twine, maybe a tape measure if you want to properly measure out your spacing. A tape measure might help you do that, and some scissors for cutting the twine. That's all that we need to make a nice Florida trellis for our tomato plants. Now, the first step, if you don't have your tomatoes in the garden already, is to lay out your tomato row. Easiest way to handle this is just to tie string onto a post at one end of the row, attach it to a post at the other end of the row. That string is going to give you a nice straight line as you plan out your garden row. Make sure you don't get a swerve to it, right? So now our spacing here for our T-post, we're going to have a T-post every 6 feet, and our tomato plants are going to be 2 feet apart. So as you can easily see, 3 tomato plants between every T-post. Now, the reason that we want to have these T-posts so frequently is because this is going to help create the support that holds our plants up. As you well know, by the end of the season, we're going to have some big old tomato plants just laden with fruit, and we want to make sure we've got a nice sturdy support to hold them up off the ground. Once we got our T-posts and tomato plants in place, it's time to start laying out our twine. So let me show you how to do it. All right, so for the first line, we're going to want to get started near the base, pretty low on the pole. We're going to do multiple strings, as you'll see as we go. But to get started, we want to get a nice secure tie off right here at the base of our first post. Okay, once we're nice and snug here, we're going to go and create a weave, hence the name Florida weave. We're going to weave our way through these tomato plants. So we're going to start on this side, and like I said, weave our way through. Now you want to make sure that you're keeping your line nice and tight. If you got a partner to help, that's always nice, right? But if not, and you're having a hard time keeping your line tight, you can go ahead and tie it off at any point along here on one of these posts and then just keep going. But you want to make sure you keep this string as tight as you can, because as we build, this is the support that's going to hold our plants up. All right, now we're down all the way to the end of this row, so we're just going to tie ourselves around this post real nice and head on back. Now this time when we head back, we're going to go back and forth so we're on the opposite side of the tomato plant that we started on, right? So on this one, as you can see, I was on this side of the plant when I went by with the string last time. I'm going to be on this side when I come by this time. Back and forth all the way down. So with our string on both sides of the tomato plant. All right, we got our first layer done, and that was pretty easy. Now, as you can see, we're right at the base of the tomato plants, and we're going to run a line like this probably every 6 inches or so. And over time, what this is going to do, by crisscrossing on either side of this tomato plant, we're essentially going to build a wall that's going to hold these tomatoes right up in the air. Obviously, your tomato plants are going to grow at different paces. Some of them are going to be taller than others. It's just going to want to adjust as you go. Now, as far as maintaining the Florida weave, we're going to want to run a line like this at least once a week. During peak growing season, when your plants are really putting on the growth, maybe more often than that, keep an eye on them. And every time they're 6 to 8 inches or so past where your last string is, it's time to run a new string across there. As we build this wall, what you're going to see happen as these tomatoes grow and kind of fill in this space, we're going to want to make sure we keep up on pruning as well. Pruning tomatoes is very, very important, but when we're using the Florida weave, maybe it's even more crucial. It's important for our tomato plants to have good airflow. So we want to make sure that we get in there and prune out any of the unnecessary suckers and that sort of thing, just to make sure we can get good airflow through our tomato plants so we can have a nice harvest all the way till the end of the season. Now, pruning our tomatoes is going to keep them happy and healthy all season long. Some of the things that we want to look for when we're pruning is diseased leaves. When you can see this damage on these leaves, this markings like this, this is likely the beginning of disease. And plus, if you got any leaves on your tomatoes that are already touching the ground, we're going to want to trim them off. So you just identify that leaf and then go ahead and snip it right off right at the base of the tomato plant, just like that. Another thing that we want to look for when we're pruning is what's called suckers. And here's a great example of one right here. Right at the base where the stem meets the body of the main plant, you'll see these coming up. All right? Well, these are suckers that are pretty much just going to deplete energy from our plant. So we want to go ahead and get them out of there. Cut them right off. And that's going to open this space up, like I said, especially once these plants get more mature, to ensure that good airflow. But what's really cool about these suckers, you can take this guy, root it in some water, start a whole new tomato plant. Kind of neat. You'll also see that we've mulched our tomato plants. Mulching is crucial with tomatoes. We want to make sure we cover that dirt so we don't get splash up from the dirt during watering. I prefer to use the drip line myself anyways. Tomatoes do not like overhead watering. That's going to cause disease to happen to our tomato plants. So to avoid that, we're going to want to mulch, right? Put a nice layer of straw or something like that down just to protect the plants from the dirt. This is also going to help conserve moisture, right? And that's important too, especially during the hot days of summer. We want to do everything we can to help our gardens conserve moisture. All right, well, it looks like I still got some more string to run here, folks, so I better quit chatting and get back to work. But this Florida weave is an easy technique that any of you can use to get your tomatoes up off the ground, keep them disease-free, and ensure a great harvest all season long. All right, well, back to work for me. Happy growing, folks.